Hello everyone, this is Ian Schaefer here with UDA Technologies, and we are just about ready to get started with our mobile estimating webinar. Today we're going to be focused primarily on some of the mobile aspects or the really useful tools that you guys will have access to while you're working with ConstructionSuite through AWS on a device like today. I think we're going to be looking at an iPad. Now, to help with the webinar today, again, I've got my colleague Jordan Davis here with me. He's one of our top product specialists, and he's going to be kind of guiding us through some of the work that we're going to be working on today. And I'll kind of talk about it, he'll show it to you, and together we're going to hopefully show you some of these high points or some of these key features that we really want you guys to take advantage of when you're working with ConstructionSuite, but now from everywhere. Now, along those lines too, I also have my colleague Sydney joining us today. She's actually going to be taking care of most of the questions as they come through. I've also asked her today to flag some of the really great questions that you guys are asking so that we can make sure that we touch on those here visually, since a lot of this information is going to be not necessarily highly technical, but I know that you guys are going to be hungry to see some of the things that we see in here. So a lot of it's really great. Now, along those lines, we actually have a very high number of attendees today, and we still have a couple of people who are trying to get logged into the session itself. So we're actually going to pause for a couple of moments now and make sure that we can get everybody logged into the session today, and then we'll get started. And so again, my expectation is that'll take maybe another minute or two, and then we will dive in from there. So thanks for your patience, guys, and we'll be right back with you. All right, team, it looks like we are ready to get started. So once again, I want to thank you guys for your patience. And again, my name is Ian Schaefer, and I'm one of the senior product specialists. It's not top. Jordan's our top guy here. But I'm one of the senior product specialists here with UDA Technologies, and today we're going to be focusing on AWS and ConstructionSuite estimating, or on-cost estimating, from the cloud. Now, to kind of highlight some of the big features here that we're looking at today, of course, we're going to be using a variety of devices to show you guys how everything is going to operate, or we're going to show you ConstructionSuite in a couple of different places, and we're going to kind of set it up on the computer, and then we're going to shift gears actually, and we're going to switch over to the iPad, which we've actually got ready and waiting, and Jordan will actually be taking us through this shortly. Now, the idea today is we're going to be focusing on all of the features that are going to help you guys generate estimates or follow up with estimates in minutes while you're working on a device like an iPad. So we're looking to highlight some of the most efficient features here for streamlined data entry, easy access for information, getting as much data out of every keystroke that you can. And so to help with that, we're going to be focusing on a lot of the features like dimensions, cost books, assemblies, and some of the key pieces that'll help you guys take estimating from weeks to minutes on a job site with something like an iPad. Now, again, as we're going through this, I highly anticipate lots and lots of questions. At least I hope you guys have questions. And so to help with that, if you guys take a look at the GoToWebinar section here, you should see an area on there marked questions. And on that questions panel, it's actually going to take you guys through some of the various different options for getting started with ConstructionSuite. Or as we're going through, if you guys have questions about what we're talking about, of course, just open it up, enter your new questions there. Sydney will answer some of them in text, so keep an eye on it if you do ask a question. She'll also flag some for us to kind of go over here. So again, just to recap the people who are going to be working with you guys today, my name is Ian Schaefer, Senior Product Specialist, and I've been working here at UDA for about 8 years, so I've had the opportunity to see a lot of evolution here with the cloud-hosted products. Amazon has been my favorite to date. I also have Jordan here. He's manning the iPad. He's definitely far more familiar with the iPad or the Apple devices than I am. I'm an Android guy. But it works beautifully on all these devices, and he'll kind of speak to the speed and everything like that we'll be looking at here as we dive in. Sydney, who I hope all of you guys have had the opportunity to talk to, is one of our kind of lead product specialists and loyalty specialists. She's got an excellent success program that, again, I hope most of you guys have had the opportunity to walk through. But she does an excellent job getting people on board with a lot of these mobile-friendly tools, mostly ConstructionOnline, I think, although she may want to speak to something else here later. But again, she's helping out on the questions, so hopefully we'll be able to take care of you guys and cover all those as well. Now, a brief little bit of history on how we got to this point. How are we now talking about estimating on an iPad when a few years ago, estimating was only recently introduced on ConstructionOnline at all? Well, that's a great series, and ultimately, maybe 10 years ago, when we first started releasing some of the ConstructionOnline features as a companion feature set to ConstructionSuite, again, this was many years ago when software as a service was still relatively young. At that point, we had a lot of demand for being able to access content from everywhere. And, oh, hang on, we just had an interesting one come through. Sorry, I apologize. So, again, as we were working about 10 years ago with some of the features and the functions in ConstructionSuite, we had a lot of demand from our users then to be able to access it outside of the office. Now, of course, the first thing that we developed was the ability to host most of your content, like files and PDFs and images, through ConstructionOnline. And that's about when it was born, maybe back in 2008, 2009. It was a brand new product then. It was one of the first of its kind. And it allowed you to take advantage of some of the ConstructionSuite content creation tools, but hosted on a website, like giving you tools like the file system that you guys might have access to from your projects. Most of the project information and the files from there would be able to go to ConstructionOnline, and you could pull it up through an app on your phone, on-site files. Some of you guys might remember using those tools back in the day. ConstructionSuite's calendar as well. This would be able to link up to ConstructionOnline and become cloud hosted as well. And this information and to-dos and again, pictures and things like that, all of this information started to share back and forth. And over the course of 10 years, ConstructionOnline has become a completely different feature set or function for ConstructionOnline. Now it's a complete project management system in the cloud. In fact, it includes some features that you won't find in ConstructionSuite because it takes advantage of the fact that you're on a job site for most of the work that you guys are doing. And you can do things like putting your daily logs directly into the ConstructionOnline mobile app. In fact, we'll kind of give you a quick little preview. We did this one last week. But just a quick idea on what you should look at in the ConstructionOnline mobile app, it's here. So you've got features like selections and calendars and all these different things. Of course, this is a huge evolution from 10 years ago when it focused primarily on calendars and files. Again, we were hitting some of these key features like this one page, maybe the second page, and that was it. Now it's this entire system that has estimating features and scheduling features and punch lists and everything from there too. But it wasn't, we weren't happy stopping there. We wanted more. And that's really where ConstructionSuite has started to kind of shift focus a little bit as well. Now, with ConstructionSuite and our new partnership with Amazon, we're able to provide ConstructionSuite through a whole new medium. This gives you the ability to put together more detailed estimates, perhaps, and write contracts and put together very complex schedules and upload those to the cloud so that everybody else can access it, but still control what I would consider the traditional desktop tools. But now your desktop may look a little bit more like this. So now we're working on a computer that, this one is actually, we're based in Auburn, Alabama. That's where we're hosting the webinar from today. But the computer that we're connecting to is, I'm not sure exactly which one it is, but it may be, this could be one from Oregon, or it might be Virginia, or based on the speeds, for all I know, this could be Sydney, Australia, or Frankfurt, Germany, because that partnership with Amazon has provided us something that's very, very unique in the cloud hosting industry. It provides us a proper global reach for our client base. Now, at this point in 2018, we have about 500,000 users spread out at almost over or close to 80 different countries. And with this Amazon partnership, we can actually provide these services in a cloud-hosted environment for everyone. Now, what this means, of course, is if you guys have your main office in one location and you guys have some employees or maybe like a bookkeeper or project manager that works from outside of the office or in a satellite office from time to time, this is the perfect solution for you. You can set it up in the cloud. You can access it from anywhere. You can get to your information from home or from your office or from the beach if you want to do that. All of this information is going to be available here, and it looks just like it would on your desktop. You can get into ConstructionSuite and you can work with all of your excellent tools everywhere. Now, this also means that some of the companies that are more mobile, we've got clients that run companies we've got one that's based out of Toronto that builds hotels across all of North America, which means that they've got people operating all across North America, and it's an excellent solution for them as well because all of those people get access to the information that's critical for their businesses, and they're able to get into and work with this as well. You'll notice on this server that I'm hosting other applications too, because ConstructionSuite by itself is phenomenal, but you do need to expand it out to really take advantage of some of the features and functions. So you'll see things like QuickBooks, or you might see PlanSwift, or you might see some other applications which again are core to your business, all of which are being hosted in the cloud as well, so that you guys can get access to these great tools too. I think, Jordan, you shared a story with us last week from one of our clients in Colorado, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell them really quickly what he was able to do a couple of weeks ago?
Sure, absolutely. So I had the fortunate opportunity to hop on a call that came in from this client. He had a quick question. I kind of followed up after I answered with trying to feel out what he was up to. He was actually in Texas, closing the last in a series of new business in Texas. I think that he said he closed up to roughly around 12, or maybe it was $15 million worth of projects, and he was setting up all of this information in ConstructionSuite from his tablet in Texas, and his home office in Colorado was seeing the data stream just coming right in, new projects, new contacts, new actions to take care of on the calendar, virtually instantly at the speed of light, because that's how fast the internet runs. Yeah. When you have a good connection, of course.
Right. And I actually thought that it was funny, too, because the other day I had the opportunity to talk to his office manager, who was torn. She thought she was going to get a little bit of a break, and then come to find out, $15 million in projects later, no time for rest. Got to keep moving in this case. And today we're going to show you some of those kind of features that would enable that sort of functionality. Again, $15 million in projects don't close themselves, so there's a lot of setup that's going to be required to make sure that these things work well. Now, I'll kind of show you where some of these pieces fit on the Amazon hosted cloud here, this CS cloud that we're looking at today. And some of the first places that we recommend you guys start are going to be areas like the estimate templates, or more importantly, areas like project templates. Now in ConstructionSuite, one of the newer features with ConstructionSuite here is going to be a project templating section where you can actually build a template of a project that includes all the core pieces that you may need. This means that for the templates, there's a templates tab up here at the top, your project templates will include things like folder structures that you would typically use. Maybe you've got a folder for contracts and bids that are being reviewed, or accepted contracts with subcontractors. All of these folders can be made available in one of your project templates here. And you can create as many project templates as you like to fill in all the details for everything that you're working on here. Creating new templates is an easy one. Again, you go to the Projects tab, click on Templates, and then select New Template, and it works just like a project wizard, because in essence, that's what these are. You're templating your projects with all of your core details, like the folders, the estimate template, the schedule template maybe, your workflow. This is a really important one too, and I hope all of you guys are taking advantage of those workflows. But all of this information is going to be available to you guys here in the project template. And then when you're creating a new project, from anywhere in the system, when you click New Project or use one of the quick links over on the right, you'll be able to step into and select one of your existing templates to use as your project moving forward. Now again, core detail here is you're setting up a lot of the regular data entry for this. Now, in the projects themselves, if you guys have a lot of content that you want to pull into the system, you can always open up your projects from here as well. Slide into the project files section and drag and drop folders and files and additional detail in from here as well. So anything that you want to pull in, you can just drag in, drop it into the system, and it'll build out this information from here. So again, as you can see, with AWS, it's lightning fast. All of this information is getting immediately loaded into the server, and it also becomes immediately available to everybody who's working in it. You'll see this in just a moment. But all of this information is going to be available here, and then from here, you can set up the detail for the estimate so that you can do most of your data entry in the field. Now, what that looks like, of course, is going to be from the Estimating tab. You've got the estimate templates here, and you can create custom templates. Most of this is where you guys want to put your items into the estimate ahead of time so that you don't have to do any typing from the iPad. Now we can do some, but again, the idea here is we want to try to keep that estimating process super lean so that we can get in and just with a few keystrokes start to build out the large, elaborate estimate and get all of the detail out of as few clicks as possible, or as few taps. Yeah. And as we're working through this information, again, these key points that you want to make sure that you have set up are using some of the estimate templates that you guys will find here, or making some additional customizations, and drilling into those projects and making sure that your project templates are set. Now, the reason that I mention those project templates more than anything is because projects and project templates include a dimension set that you guys can work with from here. So when you go to the job site, you're going to be making some measurements, or you're going to be performing some counts, or maybe you're talking to the architect and you're just getting some of the detail together, some of the core detail where you can come into and update some of these measurements here. And this will actually work to fill in some of the blanks in the estimate here. Shortly we'll show you once we switch over to the iPad. But again, you've got a very easy to access list of measurements here that will work to update quantities in your estimate. The costs will typically come from your cost books. Now, this is another feature that you're probably going to work with on the desktop itself. When you get into some of these key features, you're going to be looking at features in the estimating section like the items database. From the items database itself, this is where you can access all of the different cost books and the different tools that maybe you guys as a company are building out, or maybe some of the detail here is that you guys are looking at will be accessible. Again, if you guys are using RS Means, which is one of the cost book companies that partners with us so that we can provide some of the additional pricing information here, you can access those cost books through the items database tab in the estimating section, where you can see not only in some cases upwards of 40,000 line items available through RS Means, but you'll also find in here the pre-built assemblies as well. Now, with the assemblies that we have put together in here, you'll actually find as many of the parts and pieces that kind of factor into this as possible. And what that means with all these pieces that are factoring into it is when you look at something like interior walls, you guys may know in the cost book how much, maybe how many linear feet of interior walls you guys would use. That information is going to be available not just in RS Means, but you can always build your own cost books as well that include these assemblies. But the assemblies actually tell you what goes into these partitions. For example, in the commercial cost book, we're looking at concrete block partitions. Goes through all the material requirements, the labor requirements. If you expand this out, you can actually right-click on the column headers, or on the iPad you can actually double-click, I think it is, to expand out the various different columns that are available and include just about anything. Equipment costs, subcontractor costs, other costs, and if applicable, you'll start to see where these things come into play on these assemblies as well. Now, I'll let Jordan show you how the assemblies are going to apply on the estimate itself, but the goal here is, instead of going into your estimate and trying to do the math on the estimate itself, you can build into the cost book an assembly of parts and pieces that would be able to go together in a subcategory in your estimates in ConstructionSuite so that it can build out some of the detail from there. Again, one click and one number entry will build out all the parts and pieces in the assembly, and you can actually work with this information to kind of follow through and do less manual data entry from the estimate, more executing on results afterwards. So at this point, I'm going to actually switch over and take a look at one of the jobs that we started putting together. So Jordan, at this point, before you click into it, let's show you guys real quick how it's going to look when you're getting into ConstructionSuite or onto AWS if you're using an iPad. So let's switch the screen now. And now we're on the iPad view. And so we're going to start in this case by opening up the remote desktop client, which is pre-configured actually to take us directly into this. Now, real quick before we get started, you can actually configure all of these connections and have multiple connections available. So for those of you who might work with various different companies or partner with a few different organizations, you can actually have different connections available here. So I'm obviously not able to click on anything, but I will draw your attention to these various different sections. You can create connections to various different cloud-hosted servers from here. And I think one of the questions came through if it has to be partnered with Amazon or if we can actually go into other areas as well. And the answer to that is any hosting service you guys may want to work with would be available like this. We chose to partner with Amazon because they offer the fastest, most reliable, most wide-reaching cloud hosting services that we found, and we actually tried several different options, but Amazon was the best that we found to provide the most consistent, excellent results, and so here we are. So this is the one that we will set up for you. If you guys choose to go with another cloud hosting partnership, this performance will be the same. You guys will be able to get in there and work with all of this information just like this. Now, as far as accessing the tools go, you can see that this desktop is just like the one that I had open from Remote Desktop. When we go to open up ConstructionSuite, it's just as fast. So you'll be able to get into the application and load up the detail for it. Again, pardon the display a little bit because the iPad screen is actually much smaller than the screen that we're using here, but it's still casting up here so that you can see everything that we're supposed to be working on. And as you drill down into these various different sections, you'll be able to open up things like your projects here and take a look at some of the results when you get to a job site. Now you may remember that we just dragged in some of these files earlier, so you can see some of those additional recent files that we've brought into the section. In this case, since we're focusing on estimating, why don't you go ahead and open up that estimate for them, Jordan, so that we can get in and actually work with the on-cost estimate. Now again, in this case, we're going to be looking at some of the refining details for what might be going into these estimates. And maybe we're going to go out to a job site, or we're going to meet up with a customer over coffee perhaps and talk about doing some changes to the estimates. Maybe reducing a price here or adding in some additional options there, or maybe just going into and making some changes to the dimensions for the project and seeing the impact that's going to have. So let's actually start there and review how those dimensions are going to apply in the estimate itself. So if you come up to the Estimating tab, you'll actually find a section where you can access all of those dimensions over here under the Edit Dimensions section. And when you click on Edit Dimensions, it actually pulls up those list of values here. Now in this case, if we needed to make a change somewhere, let's say that our original measurement on the main floor was off and it's actually supposed to be 1,400 square feet. In this case, we can go into and enter in 1,400 for the update on that. And when we click OK on the estimate itself, it's actually going to go into the estimate and refresh all of the quantities that the 1,400 square foot measurement might apply. Now in our case, we've got that section already applied to, I believe that's going to be in Foundation. We should be able to see some of those numbers. You may actually see it coming through in, where else did we put those dimensions? There's going to be a couple. Which one are we looking at now?
Oh, we're looking at framing right now.
Okay. Actually, shift over to, thanks. Shift into the interior trim and stairs, because there's another area in there where you will find some of the measurements. Here you are, right here.
There you go.
From interior trim and stairs, you'll actually find some areas where we're putting in dimensions like interior doors or the number of the counts for these. And if you go back up to and open up the dimensions section from there, you'll actually be able to see where we've created a formula actually for the interior doors. And this formula is just a simple addition. In this case, we've added up the number of doors that we would need typically for things like bathrooms, half baths, bedrooms, closets, and so on. In our case, it's just a simple formula based on the IDs of the items, G plus H plus I plus J, just to give us a rough number. Now again, these are really simple examples that we're using here. We've got clients that do a lot of landscape work, so it might be the square foot of all sodded area that they're going to be working with, or any paving that they might need to do. We've also got some calculations in here for like total finished area, which is going to be just a simple sum of, once again, things like main floor, second floor, third floor, finished basement. I think some of these will get a little bit more complex as you go into areas like foundation, where we start to apply other metrics to this as well. Now again, with the dimensions, the idea here that you're working with is you want to put most of your calculations into the dimension set, like square foot areas for main floors, or maybe counts. We've got some clients who will go in and they'll do like surface areas for walls. So the dimensions in some situations may become things like, here under Add Dimensions, we could add in a dimension set for linear feet of interior walls. And then we can have another dimension, which is going to be wall height. Now, as you're going through and you're working with some of these things again, interior walls is going to be a total number of, let's say, linear feet in this case, for a perimeter of linear or for whatever it is. It doesn't matter too much what the unit is at the moment. But as you're working your way through these things, you can have your interior wall perimeter multiplied by the height of the walls, and then if the customer decides to make a change, let's say they go from 8-foot high ceilings to 9-foot high ceilings, or 8-foot walls to 9-foot walls, all you have to do is go in and change one number. It can reverse calculate the total surface area for all of your interior walls. And then that surface area is going to apply in a number of places. So if you cancel out of this screen or click OK on that screen and expand once again the list of categories that we have, you can start to get an idea of where these values might apply if you take a look under interior finishes, where we'll see painting. So paint labor and paint materials would be impacted by the total surface area of interior walls. Of course, you might be coming up with some rough square foot costs for these, so you could click into the dimensions field and apply that. Just simply click in the drop down, find the interior walls. You cancel out of that one earlier. Yeah, that's right. But you can find these things and you can apply those values so that it'll automatically calculate, in this case, quantities. Go ahead and select main floor and say yes. And so now it's going to go through and apply that as the quantity. Now at this point, all we have to do is put in a cost per square foot for a floor, and it'll help us start to figure out how much we're going to do for painting. Now this is also really applicable for things like main floor or total covered area when you're talking about doing total carpeted area, because that'll help calculate quantities for cleanup and for the carpet itself and for the pad or the underlayment and install labor and all these different areas. Again, for surface area for interior walls, those dimensions are going to come into play when you start talking about hanging sheetrock, or the perimeter itself would be for baseboards or crown molding if you guys are going to be doing that on jobs. Even with office spaces like ours, almost the entire office is carpeted in the same way, so the total square footage for the office becomes a very applicable dimension set, because that's going to help come up with a rough carpeted price. When our owner, Michael, decides that he wants to change it from carpeting to tile floors or hardwood or whatever it might be, all you're doing is just applying that one dimension to a different section of the estimate instead. Maybe we're going to go take a look at hardwood flooring instead of interior finishes, or floor covering in this case. Yeah, and then you could apply the same dimensions here and get a very similar result. In this case, hopefully, I don't know, that might be about right for the pricing. But again, as you guys work through this, you're once again, instead of trying to go through and do all these different measurements or refer back and forth between all the different things, you have that list of measurements and you can apply them here where they connect. Now, this is for applying quantities. You guys may notice that most of the information that we pull through with the dimension set is going to update the quantities and the units for anything that we work on. Now, if you open up and edit dimensions and make a change to one of those values and click OK, it'll go through and refresh all of the values in the estimate. Or if I'm working on AWS on my computer from the office and I'm doing some measurements on the set of plans by hand perhaps, or using a program like PlanSwift, I can be updating those in my office, let Jordan know, and he can actually go into and just hit the refresh dimensions button, and he can take advantage of the fact that I'm doing updates and he gets results right there on the spot at any time. It's also a great tool for applying quantities for change orders or anything like that too. Jordan could put together some of the core detail for the change orders. Back in my office, I can update the quantities and the prices and everything like that, and then within 5 minutes or so, maybe we can have Jordan running a contract or a change order proposal under the reports tab, where he could then have the customer go into and sign off on that at any given point. Again, he gets to take advantage on his iPad of the fact that I'm doing the work in the office. I think this is a great kind of a combo, where previously we've had some issues where you've got to take the change order back to the office and then figure out how much it's going to cost. Yeah, that doesn't have to happen anymore. And now you can put those together on the move. Now, in addition to some of those dimension sets, though, of course, we're going to want to work with quantities or costs rather as well. And this is again where those cost books start to come into play. So for those, if you could go back to interior trim and stairs. And in this case, I've actually got some interior doors that we're going to be using for most of these projects. It's the top item. You can see that it's here from the RS Means cost books as doors, wood, paneled, interior, 6-pack, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, that's the name that came in from RS Means. It's pretty detailed. It's kind of crazy. If he clicks on it, as he's done now, it actually takes you into the cost book to show you exactly what was selected. And then from here, we can go in and figure out if it's the right one or if we need to change them around or whatever we might need to do from here. So you can start to flip these back and forth, and you'll notice that once you insert it, you can actually update the prices too if you need to. If you update the prices or you add in a new quote on RS Means, or once again, I get the bid from the subcontractor or from a supplier, I put in their quotes here into the cost book on my computer, he can actually come back to the estimate itself. Go ahead and close down that cost book. And from the estimating tab, he'll have an option to refresh all item costs as well. Now what that does, again, it's just like with the dimensions. We can go into the cost book, we can update prices. Maybe this is an estimate template that we put together from pricing information here in Auburn, Alabama, and we want to find out how much it's going to cost in, again, maybe Seattle. So in that case, you could actually open the cost book back up again or click on the item. You can change the zip code or the multiplier for RS Means, which is up here in the top right, put in a new zip code. Let's just say, again, because it's one that always hits my mind, it's 90210 maybe. I know that's not Seattle, guys, before you say anything. But once you put in that zip code, it'll update the prices. Once the prices get uploaded or updated, you can minimize the cost book, and then once again refresh your prices on the estimate itself, and it will adjust those costs to now be more accurate for this new area. Now it takes a moment because it's going to go through the entire estimate, or maybe it doesn't take that long actually, but now we've got updated material costs for the doors there as opposed to how much they cost us here in Auburn. Now, of course, the same thing is going to work with your own custom cost books. If you guys are building your own custom cost books, you can also go into this and work with your pricing. So if you've got somebody back in the main office who's getting updated lumber prices, for example, and you need to apply those, don't forget, they can update the cost books or maybe just import the updated prices from the lumber supplier. And then you, once again, only have to click one button to get the better pricing information here instead. So refresh all item costs and you'll go from there. Now, once again, with the cost books and with the item prices and some of the detail and the depth from here, adding in new items becomes very, very important. And from here, you can actually open up the items database and start taking a look at some of the additional assemblies that might go into making these jobs successful. Now, I understand that RS Means pricing. A lot of you guys are probably thinking, we've worked with some of these tools in the past. We've worked with a program like maybe Xactimate that has a forced pricing set that we can't really change or anything like that. We might not like that a whole lot. RS Means does a fair job of coming up with pretty accurate pricing, but it is based on national averages. So my target in bringing this to you is for you guys to use this to supplement your pricing when you don't already have a price in hand. And then to do that, all you'll need to do is click on the area that you're going to be doing a little bit of work. Let's say in this case we're going to go with electrical. So we can expand out the electrical. Let's actually go into the electrical section here, if you don't mind. Sure. And so let's say that we're going to go with electrical heating or electric heating. So here we have a couple of different heating systems available, and if we wanted to take one of these and apply it on the job itself, you can go back into the estimate itself. Let's move the items database off to the right and open up the electrical systems for me, if you would. Should be up near the top, I believe. There you go. And now if we wanted to add in electrical heating as an option as well, we can go back into and open up that cost book and the assembly section there. There you go. And now all we need to do is just click on one of the assemblies and hit the Insert to Estimate button, which is down here on the bottom right. And this will give you the option to insert these assemblies, full packages, into your estimate to be able to go and work with those as well. So let's just say that we're going to have the one. And now we've got all the parts and pieces. Now the beauty of this too is it still gives us that assembly value up here at the top. So if we change this to go from 1 to 2 or something like that, we can actually adjust full sections for the job. So if we're doing something like bathroom remodels, for example, and you decide to go from 1 sink to 2 sink, his and her, all you have to do is update the assembly quantity from 1 to 2 and you're set. This also applies if we're doing multiple like apartment buildings or something like that. If you have multiple units and originally you're going to be going in there to do some remodeling projects on, let's say, 4 units, and the owner of the building says, 4 is not enough, let's make it 7. This would allow you guys to go into and update these values extremely quickly, because now with this assembly method, updating or changing the quantity for the assembly itself, let's say we want to go back from a 2 to a 1 again, it's actually going to update all of the quantities for the individual parts in the assembly to fit this new quantity. Now this is very different for those of you guys who have worked in ConstructionSuite in the past. The early versions of the cost books and the assemblies would traditionally require that you insert the assembly, and then if you needed to do an update, you delete that subcategory and reinsert the assembly with the new quantity and so on. This is old news. The new tools allow you to go through and just update the quantities for the assemblies here. Now this doesn't require that you build the assemblies or insert them from the cost books. If you'll notice, go ahead and scroll up for us to the top of the estimate, or the top of the sheet. There's additional options for the method on every subcategory to allow you to start creating your own assemblies from here. And that basically just unlocks the quantity as you guys work your way through it. So now if we go from a quantity which is blank, again, in ConstructionSuite, that's going to be an assumed 1. If we go from 1 to 1.5 to 2 to 7, whatever it is, you'll notice going from 1 to 2 just doubles all the values. If we go back from 2 to, let's say, we're going to go back to 1, it cuts them back in half. If we want to go to 1.5, again, it does all the math for us to tell us the right quantities from here. Now, if you need to go into and adjust after that, let's say instead of updating this field, let's say cable jacks. Right now it's saying we've got 5 cable jacks. If we wanted to go from 5 to 10, you could do that. You just come in, you enter in the values, and that's fine. The system will allow us to adapt with those things, but more importantly, we can update quickly or more easily on the fly, because these assembly tools allow you guys to put most of these things together all at once. Now don't forget as well, all of this is going to be available in the estimate. So from the estimate, as you go through and you make some of these changes, you'll also be able to go up to the Reports tab and generate a new proposal on the fly. Now I'm going to let Jordan start to go through and generate one of these proposals, and why don't you walk them through what you're choosing as well? And then we'll do a little mock signature on the proposal, so put the proposal together your way. I have a couple of questions to catch up on, so I'm going to follow up on these ones that Sydney has flagged for me.
Sure,
Walk
absolutely.
them through the proposal part if you will.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with most of the default proposal options just so we can quickly put out a document for us here. I will like to grab a client for us though, that way we can fill in some of the contact details at the end of the proposal so that it's not just hanging out there in space with a little empty section for a client name. Although you could do that too and fill it in later if you needed to. But for now, we're just going to skip through some of the default options here. You can see there are plenty of places for you to customize what you would like to see in your proposals as you're putting them together. We really aim at having our program be flexible to the way that you run your construction business and the way you want to interact with your clients. As we move through, we have our dimension sets here. We could choose to include them, but for the demonstration of what we can pull together right now, I'm just going to skip through to step 7. I find that most of my clients have questions about this page. Typically, they're curious of all of these options here because this is really where the meat of the estimate gets pulled into the proposal. From here, I'm actually going to show off a little bit of the power of our cloud server that we have. So I'm actually going to pull everything from the estimate into our proposal. And I'm going to pull it in as a table so that we have a little bit more options as well. I'm actually quite confident in the speed. It's one of the things that I really love to talk about when we get to our server, when we're talking about our cloud servers here. So we're ready to go. Are you ready, Ian?
Certainly.
All right.
Now, I almost wish that we would have had the proposal generating from my local workstation to kind of do a comparison.
Sure.
This is, again, is one of the sample estimates. The information that we see from these proposals, we've run these things 1,000 times. On my computer, I think the proposal takes about 10 minutes if I include everything. Now this is just because we put a lot of detail into these estimates. Some of them can be thousands of line items long, but one of the things that I always find interesting about it is the computer that we're currently using to show off some of the functionality may actually seem stronger than the Amazon hosted cloud server. But interestingly enough, that server is able to get done with less in a faster amount of time than I can normally do on my own computer. It also provides the additional benefits now, since we're doing a proposal, of doing things like, let's say we needed to do a signature right here from the job site. Now that the proposal is up and ready, if we wanted to look through and verify all the details, we can make sure that it all looks good. If you get back down to the bottom, or anywhere really, you actually have an option in ConstructionSuite to apply a signature right to the proposal as well. So again, as you go through and kind of set up some of this detail, where is this? This is page layout, I believe, is the signature section. There it is, signed document.
At the very top right, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so then you can go through here with your customer and apply that signature, and then fit it, of course, to whatever you've got set up on your proposal. I hope you guys all take a picture of that. That's Jordan's signature. But again, all of this information then becomes accessible, and you can do it all from, once again, the tablet or a phone or whatever it is. Why don't you take them up there and show them all the detail that you had in that proposal from earlier,
Sure.
by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I kind of scrolled through it at light speed here. It looks like with the iPad screen, it's kind of compressing just a little bit. The great thing is once this is generated, you can actually play around with the table sizes just a bit here. But if we were to try and chase down some of the work that we did earlier, we can absolutely do that as well. I'm afraid I'm going to give some people motion sickness scrolling through as quickly as I am.
Oh, that's fair. But you can see, based on this, though, that you can actually pull a fair amount of detail out. Mm-hmm. Now, again, in my case, my proposals tend to look a little bit simpler.
Yeah, I was going to say a client probably wouldn't want to sort through every single line item by line item here.
And the idea there, though, is whatever settings you guys have as your preferred set of settings, your preferred collection, will already be pre-selected. So from there, you guys will actually be able to go in and just hit finish when you go through and generate the proposal. If we were to do it again now, Jordan wouldn't have to change anything. He could click finish and get the exact right proposal again. And then from here, you can always go up to and add letterheads, or you can insert some additional text or content, or whatever else might be applicable from there. You'll also have options to email it directly from here. We've got the email as attachment button right here. So you can send it out even from the AWS server. That'll get out pretty easily. Or you'll be able to go through and export it as maybe a PDF. Now, I know one of the questions that just came through is in regards to Docusign. Docusign is something that only really applies to PDF, so you won't be able to assign it here, but you could easily export as a PDF and then through Docusign apply those little tags that are going to be added into the proposal itself, or to the PDF that we generate, and then it can be sent out to your customers from there. Once they send it back to you, of course, you can just drag it right back into ConstructionSuite and you're all set. Or if you want to pull it up here and apply the DocuSign boxes and then have them sign off on it on the spot, this is also great. This gives you the ability, though, to host it through DocuSign if you wanted, if you export it as a PDF, so that they could go back and reference it later, which I have found recently is actually very important, as my sister is going through and building a home on her own, and she asked us to go through and review that contract and the proposal to make sure that it was a reasonable price. Now, of course, once again, as you're going through and you're looking at most of this stuff, the detail and the data that you guys provide through the estimate templates, through the project templates, through your dimension sets, all of this is flexible. Like in here, there's actually a question, another question from one of our viewers today, who was asking about various different types of dimensions and how to apply those in. In this case, they mentioned length, width, and height for the walls. One of the things that I've found actually works really well is to have most of the numbers that you would be entering in up near the top of the dimension set, and have the calculated values down near the bottom. So if you open this up, and you'll notice that, again, some of the calculated values, like total finished area, this is a sum of all the values above it. Length, width, height, of course, that's going to be just length times width times height for whatever it is that we're measuring in this case. The resulting formula, or the resulting calculation, might apply a little bit further down on the list. And that way you can just put in numbers. Just enter in your numbers all along the top up here, and then have it just auto do the calculations down below, and have those that apply into the estimate itself. Now, there was another question here about Having to enter twice, 3 or 4 or 5 times. Well, let's just read this one off. Can I enter length, width, height, and then do the math as opposed to doing it all in the same cell and possibly having to enter the same things 2, 3, 4, or 5 times? And that's ultimately kind of where these calculations come into play. A value for any given cell in here can be used everywhere. So if you've got something like the height of your walls, and you know that this is going to apply across several different calculations for figuring out drywall or paint, or maybe figuring out if the ceilings are too high, maybe we've got to have somebody coming out there to do specialty work on the ceilings or fans or something like that. It might cost extra if they're above a certain height. I'm not sure. But again, all these different things can calculate off of each other to provide you various different results. I think the most impressive dimension set that I have seen to date is one of our users down in Australia who is actually able to put together a dimensions list of probably about 700 values. I know it's kind of crazy, but this user does what he refers to, I think, as tear down rebuilds. They'll be given a plot of land that has an existing structure on it. They demolish the structure, and then they build something brand new on top of it. Of course, pretty self-explanatory. But he's able to do complete custom structures with the demolition and everything as part of the estimate. And he gets these things done in 15 minutes because he's got that custom cost book, he's got the dimension set, and he enters probably about 30 or 40 values up here at the top, and the other 700 or whatever it is auto-calculate. So he just uses the results in the estimate, and it goes from there. Now, a follow-up question to that is, how would something like that actually be accomplished? And that is, once again, through the project templates. So if you create a project template that knows it needs to have 750 or 800 different dimensions, apply that as a project template that already has the estimate in place, and that way all you have to do is copy the project or use that template to build your new project, enter in those first 30 or 40 values, open up the estimate and click Refresh Dimensions, so that it'll go through and figure out what quantities we're going to have applied. Next, click Refresh All Item Costs, so that even if we built the cost book built the estimate 30 years ago, I guess that couldn't have been done. So 20 years ago, even if you built it then, the estimate itself would still be applicable today. All you have to do is just click Refresh Costs, and then your pricing information gets updated. Refresh Dimensions, the quantities get updated, and now you've got the right costs, the right quantities, and the only thing left at that point is to go to the end of the estimate and put in your company overhead and margin. So how much money are we going to make off of this 15 minutes of work? And that's the last step in this process, and then we can go through and start proposing to the customer and making some adjustments and so on. So that would be one of those questions. Another question about the cost book, I'm assuming, came through about changing the zip codes and having it adjust the content of the assemblies, I assume. For example, I think the example that they gave is block walls in Detroit are going to be different than block walls in Florida, where a block wall has to meet certain hurricane standards. And if you actually go through and look at some of the RS means pricing, they account for that. You'd have the hurricane standard block walls available for both Detroit and Florida. It's just a section of the estimate or a section of the cost book that you're probably not going to use as often. And this is the general concept behind how RS means prepares all of this information, assemblies especially. And I would definitely recommend you guys use this as one of your examples. RS means gives you most of the information that you might need. And if you might need that information, then they want to make sure that it's available in here with the right kind of multipliers. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to use these things on every job. If you guys have access to a commercial version of ConstructionSuite, the commercial cost book with assemblies is 40,000 items plus. And it's got as many or more assemblies available because you can take 40,000 items and you can make millions and millions of different combinations of things. So they've got a lot of content in here, and you guys are going to use a small section of it. But that small section is going to be vitally important as you guys go through and work with these things. So I highly recommend you do this. As a side note, there was another question that came through about those cost books. Can we use multiple cost books in a single estimate? And the answer to that one is also absolutely yes. And that's a great one too, because you may use a combination of your own prices. You'll have one cost book which is all your labor price or your lumber prices. Maybe you have another cost book which is all your subcontractor prices, and you just like to keep those separate because it's faster to export a cost book and send it to your lumber supplier so that they only have to update whatever prices are there, rather than exporting it and chopping it up to get something that you want to send to them. So maybe you do keep these things separated, and maybe sometimes you sprinkle in a little RS means as well, and you use a combination of 3 or 4 or 10 or 100 different cost books. Ultimately, you can use them all, every single one of them, and if you update prices in one, then you can hit refresh all prices to get what you need. Or, as it turns out, the estimate also gives you an option to select an area to refresh your prices. So if you just wanted to hold down and change the prices here for the electric perimeter, then you can actually update just the prices for this one section by hovering over refresh item costs and then refresh selected items, and then go through and pick which sections you guys want to estimate. So even if you're using a combination of different things and you found out recently that the cost of lumber has more than doubled, which happened, over IBS this past year, or just before the International Builder Show in Orlando in January, lumber prices went crazy. And so if we had to account for that, but we didn't want to update everything, we could just go in here and update the framing packages to get the new lumber prices that we just received. And then we're set. Nothing else in the estimate will change. So again, you've got plenty of options for how to use these combination of items or features to get exactly the results that you guys are looking for at any section of the way. Looks like we have a couple of additional questions in here as well. But at this point, I think we've got most of the general questions as well. And I'm fairly sure that we've covered most of the detail that we want to share with you guys as far as creating these estimates in the field. I want to mention, though, real quick before we move away from the iPad, that, again, we used to run a construction company as well. In fact, UDA Technologies was, before it, that the technology and the architecture firm was its own entity. We actually ran as a construction company as a whole. We built projects all over the Southeast region, mostly around college campuses for multifamily homes or student housing. We also did some custom homes, and sometimes you can still find UDA plans or United Design plans online. But one of the most valuable things that we could do in order to ensure successfully executed projects that came in under budget every time, we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide an outline to a site supervisor or project manager on site so that that supervisor or that project manager would know what they were working with. One of our best project managers actually collected a few estimates from similar jobs, and she would actually go through and review a lot of the detail from those to make sure that she was able to anticipate some of the costs that might have been unforeseen previously and make sure that we accounted for those as well. And with the iPad and with ConstructionSuite available on the iPad, you can do exactly that. There's no limit to the number of projects or the amount of history you guys maintain. So if you wanted to be able to go back in and take a look as she did, you'd be able to go in and reference back to some projects that have the same project type or that were built from the same project template. You can actually see the type here. And you can even compare dimensions without having to open up estimates or anything like that to make sure that you're looking at something very, very similar. It's often something that people don't think about, but it is one of the fastest, easiest ways to make sure that you guys are successful on jobs and can maintain those budgets. You set the budget for a reason, or you set the estimate for a reason. Now let's make sure that we stick to it. So great tools there. Now at this point, of course, we've hit about the hour mark, which is usually more time than I want to take of yours, because I know you guys have some success to go out there of your own to gather. But if you guys do have any additional questions on any of the features or the functions that we've covered today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always find our contact information by going up to the Help menu in ConstructionSuite and clicking the Contact Information tab here, where you can find phone numbers and email addresses to reach out to us at any time. And don't forget as well that if you guys do have something in this webinar that you want to go back and recap, we'll have this video recorded and produced up on YouTube here in the very near future. Probably today, probably tomorrow or possibly Monday. And for all of you who actually join the webinar today, you'll be getting the recording as a link via email anyway. And for anybody else, of course, just reach out to us at any time. We'd be happy to provide. For now, though, I think we are getting waved off, so we're going to go ahead and dive back into our day. Hopefully we have a chance to go over some of these great new features with you guys again in the future. And don't forget The last in our summer series of webinars is going to be next Thursday, where we're taking a look specifically at the Redline feature in ConstructionOnline. Redline is a fantastic feature because it actually gives you the ability to take all the work that you're putting together, not just on ConstructionOnline, but here in ConstructionSuite too. You can put together to-dos and activities and schedule tasks. All of that can be sent up to ConstructionOnline, where you can then pin it to the plans wherever it applies, and we'll be showing you guys how to do that and more next Thursday starting at 3 o'clock Central. Hopefully we'll see you then, and until then guys, thanks again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.